Thanks for listening to the Tech Tools for Teachers podcast, where each week we talk about a free piece or two of technology that you can use in your classroom. I'm your host, Shannon Martin. I'm a middle school teacher, technology coach, and personalized learning coordinator for my district.
And I'm her producer and husband, Fuzz.
Hey.
Hello.
So we took a week off.
Yes.
And here we are.
Yes, the episode before episode 70.
Correct.
And we are ready to party.
Woo.
It's a very topical subject today.
Yeah, it is a very topical.
Considering the time of this certain 4 years that we're in.
Yes, it's election year.
What?
And
Nobody's told me.
And I talk a lot about the coaching stuff that I do, and I talk a lot about my staff development stuff, but P.S. I also teach social studies.
When I met you, you were a language arts teacher.
You have. I have taught many a subject in my lifetime, but beyond coaching in my district, and technology and computers and robotics, I also teach social studies. So
yes.
And we have, just like everybody, we have some virtual learners and we have lots of face-to-face kiddos, and trying to find ways of connecting kids. And like Civics right now is, I mean, it's all over the news, it's everywhere, the election stuff is going on, but also more like civics in action and getting kids involved in their communities and stuff like that. But like, how do you do that with all these restrictions right now and all that kind of stuff? So I was like, hey, I've been digging around, exploring some sites, and some of them I've used before, but these are very relevant right now, and I know we're all trying to find ways of teaching these topics, and kids have questions and trying to help them answer them. So we are doing civics tools this week, and there's 2 tools and a review tool, I guess. 2 tools and something I've talked about before, but it has upgrades and new things. And our first site is called allsidesforschools.org. You can go to All Sides, which is like the starting place of this, but they have a section.
So it's like the more adult version of that?
Kind of.
Okay.
Yeah, where it's just the news feed, and you can get the news feed in this allsidesforschools.org section as well. But what's really cool about this site is it takes like current news, current topics, everything that is all over the place.
Topics, yeah.
And then it teaches kids how to like examine bias and do critical thinking and practice skills with one another. So if you go to allsidesforschools.org to start, you can, and then classroom activities is kind of my go-to spot on this. The read the news is where allsides.com comes from. So the news part, that's where the site starts from. What it does is it gives you a current topic. So obviously there's a lot of election things. There's also a lot of stuff about the Supreme Court.
Sure.
But there's also like environmental issues and all these kinds of things. And it literally will show you, like, there's a scale. If it's really far left, if it's really far right, or if it's in the center with how the article is written. So it gives it for anybody. So allsides.com is for anybody.
Okay.
But when you go to the school specific section, so you click on for schools, they break it down. If you scroll down, and it tells you like how to look at an article. So is it far left? Is it far right? Is it more in the center? Is it giving you, information? Is it strictly informative? And then they have this like activity kind of like section or a way, it's called Mismatch, and it connects with students around the country with different backgrounds, and then it connects kids together. And this is definitely like middle school, high school for sure, probably leaning like upper middle school. And so kids can have discussions with each other from around the country, like learning different sides of things. It also has a dictionary, so it picks up like current topics, and then it breaks them down for you. So And also just vocabulary that's used all of the time. So if we're talking about what's authoritarian mean, like what does bailout mean? What does big pharma mean? Like, so it's vocabulary that's used a lot in the media, and then explains like what that means, and then also how it's used. So how is it used in questions, and how can that make, if people read it one way, how does that skew your thinking, kind of? So the site is super informative, and it gives good balance for teachers to be able to teach the news and teach current content, and also lay it out for their students, to teach their students to be critical thinkers and critical readers when they're looking at like media articles and stuff. Anyway, there's so many offerings with this website, and it's really, really helpful when it comes to teaching different civics topics and just topics in general that usually are a little more controversial, or you'd have to, put a lot of planning into making sure that you're balanced in what you're talking about. But they have a whole section for lesson plans, and like focusing on free speech, and then news literacy, and how do you teach news literacy to students, and like hot button words and free speech. So there's just all these different topics and conversations and materials for teachers to be able to teach all of those topics. So it's a very cool site, and there's a lot.
One of the, on the if you click on bias on the top navigation, it talks about media bias ratings, and then just says everyone is biased. All sides media bias ratings help you easily identify different perspectives so you can get the full picture and think for yourself, which I just kind of think sums up a lot about what they're doing. And
is that on the news section?
Yeah, it's I clicked there. I got there from the I clicked on the Red Blue Dictionary, and then from there it was on the top there. So but yeah, it's a very, very cool site, and has a lot of resources, and tries to be as I guess outside looking, like outside the fishbowl at everything, to kind of explain to you what's going on inside the fishbowl. Yeah. Which is pretty cool.
And so it's allsides.com, which is where like all of the stuff is, but the teacher school specific stuff is allsidesforschools.org.
And I've clicked on a number of topics in it, like on the topics that you expect to be in the dictionary, and in the topics that you expect to be left-leaning. It explains right away that it's left-leaning topic, and this is how the left see it, and this is how the right sees it, and this is what it looks like in the middle. And then same on right-leaning topics. So it's very, very well written and objective, it seems.
And also, did you see where it says like all sides media bias ratings? So you can like go through, and they tell you like different news sources and articles, and like their biases, or like where they sit, which is great for like kind of teaching your kids, like when they're looking at things and comparing them, being able to see like all sides of stuff. So TD. But anyway, it's a very cool site, very helpful, especially for all of the discussions that we are having right now in school, just because the election's coming up, and I feel like as kids get older, they're starting to get more involved in the news and wanting to know what's going on in the world and stuff. So it's just a great way to teach that to kids.
Yeah, and definitely helpful no matter what kind of community you live in, because we're in a more rural community, or you teach in a more rural community, very rural, I guess in some instances. But if you have been before in other communities that were more city-like and urban, and definitely a difference in the climate in each of those communities. But with this resource, you can really teach in any of those and use
and
this.
Show like this is what's going on in the rest of the world.
And hopefully not get yelled at by parents.
Right. Because you're getting all sides of every issue. Tiddy. I should have like a little ding every day. All sides. Ding. So that's our first one. Our second site is called, it's constitutioncenter.org.
Okay.
So the good old Constitution of the United States of America.
Are you going to start breaking out in the song here?
No. Okay. I could start but I could do like Schoolhouse Rock.
Yeah.
I'm just a bill
Mm-hmm.
on Capitol Hill. Okay, I can't sing, so I'm not gonna hurt anybody else's
No,
ears.
no, keep going. I'm just please don't.
No.
No, you can if you want.
No. But part of the constitutioncenter.org/interactive constitution is where I go. And what's cool about this is there is a huge collection of resources, which as a teacher, we love resources that are free. But you click start exploring and it breaks down. So you first get the whole Constitution broken down, which is kind of nice because it's really kind of overwhelming. And right now, as I'm charging into my civics unit with my students, I do a lot of choice, and I like the kids to explore and come back with their questions and build projects around things they're interested in. And so this site offers it where I can have the kids digging and exploring and finding parts of the Constitution versus going through word for word, line for line, all that kind of stuff. But what you can do is, so it gives you like the preamble, Article 1, it goes through all of the articles, breaks them all down for you, which is great. By the way, when you click on the preamble, I grew up in Illinois.
Okay.
And as an 8th grader, we had to have the preamble memorized.
Same here.
In order to graduate.
Yep.
That
Same here in
is
Wisconsin.
no longer a requirement.
Oh.
Really, in the districts that I've been in since I've become a teacher. Which I think is interesting. Now, they do have to take a Constitution test, like to graduate high school, but you don't have to do the preamble in 8th grade anymore. So I don't know if that's just things that have changed or if different states have different requirements. I do not know. But anyway, so you can go to the section that you're interested in, and then they have the drafting table where it like breaks down the text for you and kind of explains it to you. And what's cool about that, it's like how things have changed over time. And you can dig deeper, you can analyze it, you can print it, there's all kinds of stuff. But in the classroom, you can click the view the preamble section, and then they give you all kinds of fun resources about the preamble. So the founding documents, there's videos that go with it that explain each section. Some sections have a couple of videos, some of them have like 1 or 2. But then there's a media library section on the site, which goes through then. There's podcasts that break down parts of the Constitution. There's town hall videos where different people are interviewed. There's blogs, and then there's educational videos. And so for each section of the Constitution, there's like all of these resources to help you teach about that portion of the Constitution. So, and they go through all the amendments, and it's really kind of cool to expose your students to the Constitution, make it interactive, let them kind of pick and choose and explore information without saying, we're going to sit down and read an article today about the Constitution, and you can base some cool projects around it, which is nice. They also talk about like drafting the Constitution and what that looked like. And there's just a whole lot of resources on this site, which is really cool. And there's peer-to-peer exchanges where there's like dialogue that goes on, and you can explore that if you want to exchange with like other schools and have like discussions. So there's a lot of things out there to kind of get your kids learning some more about the Constitution without going through memorizing parts of the Constitution. And just there's some cool interactive stuff, and they can explore and make some choices, and there's some cool videos and podcasts and discussions and all kinds of stuff. And
I was
very relevant.
Swimming around in the 9th Amendment because I forgot what that one was about.
Oh.
So.
And what did you discover?
Well, I had to look up the word enumeration.
New vocabulary. Good.
Which means to list things out one by one. To turn number 8,
nice.
Enumerate. But it means that if you didn't put it in the Constitution, essentially, and I'm not a lawyer, if you didn't put it in the Constitution, doesn't mean that you don't have the rights that aren't listed in the Constitution, because some of the anti-federalists were opposed to including a Bill of Rights because they thought if you had a Bill of Rights, then that means those are the only things that you're allowed, and that the government can control everything else, and this is saying the government can't control the things that aren't listed. That this is not what it's about. So
cool. Look at you learning.
Yeah. Now ask me again in a year.
We'll just listen to
ask
the
me again in
podcast
4 years.
again.
Yes, I will. Yes.
See?
There you go.
Cool. But yeah, so I thought I used that one with my students as a way of exploring the Constitution and letting them dig in and kind of base projects and research around it versus just like, here, we're going to read it together or things like that. Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of cool. And it's interactive and a cool resource.
I feel like there was a lot of memorizing when I was in school. Is there still memorizing of other things that we have to memorize?
I don't think so. I guess it depends on
Emancipation Proclamation?
No.
No, was that not?
Gettysburg Address.
Gettysburg Address, excuse me. That was the one.
I don't know. Not so much.
Oh, okay.
But, I mean, I'm a firm believer in, researching on your own and exploring things you want to learn. And,
I was
all that kind of
just
stuff.
curious because I
sure
don't remember, like,
our
oldest daughter. I don't recall her.
She's had to memorize, like, some speeches and stuff, but never, like, the Constitution. I don't know.
I'm going to drill her when she gets home from work tonight.
There you go. I'm sure she'll appreciate it. The last thing I want to mention, and I know I've talked about it before, I think in episode like 35 and
51,
52, I think. But iCivics, I'm a fan. It makes some cool civics things interactive. So I've talked about it before, but there is a new game, at least it's new in the past couple of months here. I just had my students playing it this week. It's called Cast Your Vote. Okay. And this one I think is cool because I've always done like Win the White House when it comes to elections. And the kids, we'll be starting our designer president project in my class this week where they like, if you could pick leaders and specific topics and they like design a person that they think would be ideal as the president. But what I think is really important and now I'm trying to incorporate it more with students is the idea of like you need to know your like local government and you need to understand how that process works because the presidential election is always a big deal. It comes up and we talk about it, but like understanding your local government and like what that means. So what Cast Your Vote is, it's one of their newer games and it focuses on understanding like the pieces that build an election. So it teaches you how to it kind of sets you up like, all right, here's some things, cast your vote, and you vote, and then they're like, oh well, you didn't know anything about any of those people who were running, did you? Let's go back and learn. And then it puts you back in time and then it sends you like emails on a little pretend computer and like to get to know the candidates and then decide, and then out of these like 7 candidates pick 5, and then it wheedles down and it teaches you how to get ready to vote in like a primary election and stuff. Anyway, so I think it's kind of cool because it gives them the process before just doing the presidential election and you get to kind of experience it that way. So that one is called Cast Your Vote. And again, iCivics, there's all kinds of games to cover all kinds of civics topics. And they're always kind of coming up with new ones. But they have Activate, so pick an issue, lead a campaign, grow a movement, and make a difference. They have one on the branches of power. They have one about the court systems. They have one about rights. So it covers a lot of those main topics that you talk about in civics class. And it engages the kids. For me, I'll have the kids play and then we have really good discussions afterwards. Like, okay, like what steps did you take and what steps did you take and what are the things you learned from that kind of stuff. So I know we've talked about it before, but I think it's super helpful when you are sparking discussion with your kiddos.
Yeah.
So
I'm getting yelled at right now for voting without
follow the directions. But yeah. So yeah, a little civics lesson happening this week on our little podcast. Might be a little helpful for the upcoming weeks. But yeah.
I would say so. Very helpful and very timely.
We try. We do what we can.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. We appreciate it.
Yes,
This has been
we
the
do.
Tech Tools for Teachers podcast. If you ever have any questions, you can find me on Twitter @SmartNWI. And if you ever want to get more information on the links to the technology discussed in this episode, you can visit smartnwi.com. All kinds of fun things to dig through. Check out the site.
EdTech Directory.
EdTech Directory. Yeah, it's like fully loaded now. New episodes each week. Thanks for listening. Go educate and innovate.
It is pretty nice now. It is like super simple. You start typing.
Yeah, you
something,
can type something in.
and it feels like guesses what you're trying to look
Yeah.
for.
Good job.
Thank
Good job
you.
on that techie guy.
Thank you. I found the right plugins finally. The ideas and opinions expressed on this podcast and the Smart and WI website are those of the author Shanna Martin and not of her employer. Prior to using any of the technologies discussed in this podcast, please consult with your employer regulations. This podcast offers no guarantee that the tools that we've described will work for you as they were described, but we hope they do. Thanks for listening. Have a great week.